Namaskaras, everyone. So we're so happy to be here again. I was Swami Vidyanandaji was here, so happy to be back in this beautiful center in Las Vegas. We'll start with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. So, welcome to those who are here. I don't know, today is big day, Super Bowl, and we were talking also, it's Olympics. So, anybody who's here and anybody who's alive now, you're very rare and special who's now watching these sports. But if you're watching on the recording after the Super Bowl or your Olympics viewing, then welcome to you too. So we're so excited to have many things happening next month, this February, where we're going to continue with the series of talks. But in March, we're really excited. We have three exciting dates to announce. Swami Vidyanandaji is going to be here on the 4th. And Swami Sarvadevanandaji is going to be here on the 18th and the 19th. We're so blessed. And for those of you who would like to be initiated, he's going to do an initiation here on one of those days, on the second day in the morning. So reach out to us. And then we have Swami Arupeshanandaji the last Saturday of the month. So we have an action-packed March, and we're reaching out to some different swamis for talks in all the months coming up. So you'll be able to see some amazing talks and some swamis of the order from different parts of America. So let us begin with our own talk here today. I thought this was something that came to me really strong, the idea of the deeper meaning of compassion, or just compassion. And sometimes you can also call it empathy. So compassion and empathy. What is that, and how does that work? What is the spiritual ideal of compassion and empathy? And you would think it's a very simple subject and topic when you look at it. Being compassionate, being kind, being concerned for others. Empathetic means to be aware of other people's needs. You would think that would be a universal thing that's good. But I learned from looking into the subject a little deeply that there's a little bit more to it than that in this two-sided world. So let us just see what some of the great ones, what they have to say about the subject of compassion or empathy. You could even broaden it to that love, heart-centered, loving feeling. So this is obviously the first thing that jumps to mind when you're in the Western world is what Jesus said. And Jesus identified the highest law, the first commandment. The highest commandment is to love God with all one's heart, soul, and mind, and to love thy neighbor as oneself. And this is from Matthew 22, verse 40. So this is probably familiar with anybody who's a Western devotee of spirituality, or even Eastern. This is kind of a common thing. He said this is the highest law. There was many laws in Judaism and the Ten Commandments and many injunctions in the Torah to be able to lead a holy life. And there's so many little details. But when one of his disciples asked him what is the most important commandment to keep, when he identified this, I think it really transcends and speaks to the heart of spirituality. And it's a beautiful thing. And you would think that would kind of be finished. That would be enough to say that the highest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. So loving that infinite being, the creator of all, the soul of our own soul, the creator of our own soul, the essence of our own consciousness, and our neighbor who was also created by that same divinity. And so this seems to be a very simple instruction, but it's obviously not so. Otherwise, I think our world would be a much more wonderful place than it is. And I looked at also in other parts of the Bible, and it talks about love one another. And these are all the different places in the Christian Bible where love one another is mentioned. There's John, there's Romans, there's Thessalonians, there's Peter, lots of different places in John. It talks about loving one another. It's repeated over and over and over again. That ideal of compassion. And of course, when you get in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there's one take on this. You loving one another. Obviously, some people who are, sectarian, they might not see the broad implications when they say love everybody. They may only feel that you should love people of your own religion or people who are more like you or something like that. They break it down. That kind of veers away from the whole beautiful ideal of that. And obviously, it's not easy to talk about these highest ideals of spirituality. But Sri Ramakrishna takes it even further. This is obviously Sri Ramakrishna mentioned all religions, all expressions that human beings have to their divinity, to what they can conceive of as divinity, and not just one form of religion of I and thou, but all the forms that can take. So that's dualistic, non-dualistic. It's even where there's not a deity at all. There's so many different paths, and this is what Sri Ramakrishna said. And this is, he said, Master to Jayagopal. He was talking to one of the disciples. One should not harbor malice toward any person or any opinion. The believers in the formless God and the worshippers of God are all, without exception, going toward God alone. The jnani, the yogi, the bhakta, all without exception are seeking him alone. The follower of the path of knowledge calls him Brahma. The yogi calls him Atman or Paramatma. The bhakta calls him Bhagavan. Further, it is said that there is the eternal Lord and his eternal servant, Jayagopal. How can we know that all the paths are true, Master? A man can reach God if he follows one path rightly. Then he can learn about all the other paths. It is like reaching the roof by some means or other. Then one is able to climb down by the wooden or stone stairs, or by a bamboo pole, or even by a rope. A devotee can know everything when God's grace descends on him. If you but realize him, you will be able to know all about him. You somehow meet the master of a house and become acquainted with him. Then he himself will tell you how many houses he owns and all about his gardens. This is from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna Katharita by Mahendra Gupta. So that's from Swami Nikhilananda's translation. So he takes it even further than the biblical ideal. He said that there isn't any heathen or all these words that come up when you're talking about a sectarian person has become very, very much focused in this world with so many sects, so many different religions. And one religion, again, one is true, the other are all false. My religion is true, yours is false. Or if they do some kind of interdenominational work, sometimes they'll put up with the other ones, right? As long as they have to work together. But they really don't respect the religion. They don't think they're as good as they are. They just think that, okay, well, we'll just talk to each other. But they really don't in their heart see them as another beautiful path to God. That would really help. And that's the ideal of a lot of really noble ideals. Like even when Swamiji came to America in 1893 to the Parliament of All Religions, the ideal was honestly it was a very noble thing to bring all the world's religions together and find common ground. Where is this common ground? That is that is there, And so, of course, this is a noble ideal, but in practice, there was a lot of competition when Swamiji was there. One wanted to be the highlight, and the other wanted to be, proving the other one's kind of wrong or whatever. But Swamiji, it's kind of interesting because he didn't speak the first days because he says he was being a little nervous. I kind of don't think that may be the real reason. He was observing, and they went ahead and talked. When he finally did stand up after the first few days, and sisters and brothers of America came out of his lips, from his heart was this total inclusion of all the brothers and sisters, not just some, not just the Hindus in the audience, or not just the Christians in the audience, or whoever, the Brahmos were there. Everybody was there, right? But all people, and they felt that. And he had a standing ovation just from those words alone. Obviously, it wasn't the words that caused that kind of a reaction, but it was the essence of who he was and what he represented in the Ramakrishna message coming to America, of inclusion of every religion, every expression. It's such a beautiful high ideal. And one of the reasons why I honor Ramakrishna and the Vedanta centers around America and around the world is they're very inclusive. I find them to be very, very welcoming. I mean, we have on our own altar some of the different traditions here. We have, of course, Ramakrishna and Vivekananda and Ma, and we have Brahmanandaji, but we also have, and without any, and of course, all the figures of Divine Mother and Shiva, but we also have, without any complaints, we have Lord Buddha, we have Mahavatar Babaji, we have Paramahansa Yogananda, we have Ramana Maharshi on the altar, and they've been here for years, almost 5 years now. Not a complaint. All the monks have seen them. All the monks. Not one time has anybody but just said, oh, that's pretty rare. We have all the symbols of all the religions. Maybe you can't see them on the camera, but all of them, the main world religions are there as in symbols, in the harmony of religions and the essence of Sri Krishna, because he actually practiced them. Because he practiced what he said. He reached the roof. Then when he looked at all the paths, he saw them leading to the same place eventually, in some lifetime, I guess, or whatever. But, all of these places, if practiced with sincerity and humility and humbleness and from the heart, all of these things take us there. Anandamoy Ma said, in the quest of self-knowledge, love is a crucial factor. Whether it pleases you or not, you will have to make the eternal your constant companion, just like a remedy that has got to be taken. Without loving God, you will not get anywhere. Remember this all the time. They say it constantly. All the saints say devotion, devotion. Why? Because you go beyond your intellect. You go beyond your thinking factor. And you go into first the feeling factor, then pure feeling, which is even deeper. And that leads directly to the one. This is kind of interesting because, you would think that this is a high ideal and everybody can agree on the fact that this is love and together. When you look at some of the different viewpoints. One thing that I thought I would share with you, I kind of go back to something else in a bit, but I was kind of shocked because I started to wonder, so clearly stated in the Bible. And then, of course, if you get into the scriptures of the East, Ramakrishna and the Gita, all these places where there's the harmony of religions, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist should be able to live side by side and really respect each other in the course of life, in the course of just respecting that the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or this love thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Those should be fairly simple and clear, right? But that's not the case. I was wondering, because you see certain beautiful expressions of all this in all the religions, like in some Christian churches, in some places you see that truly, if people walked in, they would just accept you and try to do the best they could to serve what your needs were. and bring you closer to what they saw as God. I've seen some beautiful Christian exemplars of this. I've seen beautiful Buddhist and Muslim exemplars of these, such true brotherhood and welcomingness, kindness. But then I've also seen, in the name of religion, some very cruel things brought out. And I was wondering, how in the world could you take something so simple as love thy neighbor as thyself and turn it into a system of in governance or in politics or all these different things, or even in a religious context of enmity and hatred, and seeing some slavery been accepted when this is stated in the Bible so clearly. And some of these people were claimed to be Christian people, and they found justification in the Bible for slavery. Now we're seeing this kind of be done in the name of immigration, and it's been a little bit of a kind of a double-edged sword for this to create others, people who are excluded from that loving thy neighbor. And so what I found, and it was kind of interesting. So I just started to read up on some things because there was something that happened recently that helped me to dive into this. And I really wanted to understand from their point of view how they could justify what's going on in America, like, for example, today. With, obviously we have to have borders and there's passports and all that kind of thing. But there's also humanity in this type of situation, especially when you have people that have lived here most of their lives or all their lives. There's ways of going about things with a compassionate and kind heart, right? And this is something that I was really shocked, to be honest with you. Like I said, this is the deeper meaning of compassion. So we're going to get into some layers, and as a matter of fact, we'll continue this next week because there's so much to this. There's so many layers. You'll be kind of interested to see where this goes if you're a follower of Sri Ramakrishna. But this is what it says. There's a growing, and this is from I found, there's a growing movement among some conservatives pushing back against traditional notions of empathy. What's behind it, and what might it mean, especially for Christian conservatives? And then this is the host. He said, people tend to think of empathy or caring about other people's feelings as a good thing. But in some conservative circles, there's a growing chorus of voices arguing that empathy could be bad. For example, then they had a soundbite of Elon Musk, and he said, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. Interesting, isn't it? Empathy. That's billionaire Elon Musk making recently in the broadcast of Joe Rogan Experience. They were discussing the idea that unchecked immigration into Western countries is threatening Western political and cultural values. Musk agrees and warns that societies are at the risk of self-destruction. Then he said, there's so much empathy that you actually love. And then there was some agreement. So that we've got civilizational suicide empathy going on. And then, of course, he has a close advisor to the current administration, and this whole idea of what they're doing with the government and so on. And he said, Musk said, empathy can be good, but it's too often weaponized to persuade well-meaning people to support bad ideas. In recent months, several high-profile Christian conservatives sounded similar warnings. And then they're saying, empathy almost needs to be struck from the Christian vocabulary. This is another person talking. Another person said, yes, it does. Empathy is dangerous. Empathy is toxic. Empathy will align you with hell. I really think it is hoisted up at its highest virtue, but even a virtue at all, I think it's the highest virtue, or even a virtue at all. I think that really gets us into a really big mess. So this is quite interesting. And then, of course, there's all the other choruses in there. So now you've got a simple statement from the Bible that's pretty unequivocal. And you've got justifications for creating us and them. You've got justifications for seeing this with enmity and in the name of creating order and solving problems that may or may not be there. This was something that was interesting too, is that just recently, Mike Johnson said that, the Pope came out and basically said something similar to love of the God, like what Jesus said, you love God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and thy neighbor as thyself. You're, take in those who are, I was sick and you healed me. I was hungry and you gave me food. All these things are pretty clear in the Bible, and the Pope was saying that. And this is Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, came back and said, no, he's wrong. He said that because of that, we have a lawless society if you just follow that, and you have to have these hard and fast rules. And that's interesting. Through diving into his Bible and coming out with what he wanted to, he said that there's a different standard for governments and individuals. Now that's kind of an interesting, dangerous thing, because the same standard for governments and people are there for karma. There is karma for nations, karma for individuals. As a collective, a nation acts and has certain reactions against it. So if you don't believe that, look in history and see what certain nations have done and the karmic backblow that came against them. So is it true that nations are excluded from this ideal of compassion, love, and caring? Now, obviously, it's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law when we're looking at these things, isn't it? If you apply a certain logic and you implement it with kindness and compassion or empathy, you can apply the rules and do the same thing in a compassionate way. You can create order with a kindness and with for example, look at what Gandhi did in this horrible situation. He could have put up and created arms and created an army and invaded and killed the English and all. That's one option he had, because there was that going on at that time. But look at what Gandhi did. He banded those same young energies, and he talked about non-violent, non-cooperation with evil. And this was so beautiful and such an expression of high spiritual value, high spiritual ideals in this world for maybe the first time in ages, that somebody has actually put that into practice to free India with non-violent means, without creating an army, without creating hate, without saying the English are horrible, they're dogs, we hate them. They said, we want them to leave as brothers. We want them to leave, and they did. Now, that was asked him. He said, "Do you think this could work against Hitler?" Because this was during the Second World War when things were going on. He said, "I do." He said, "Not without losses." He said, "But there have not been losses with what had been going on." Now, you can always argue that there's kshatriyas in the Indian system, which is the warriors that are sanctioned in Dharma. So they're supposed to protect the nation and to protect the well-being, ensure the well-being of the society itself. And so there is that too. So we don't say that non-violence or not having an army is the answer for everything and everybody. But what it talks about in a kshatriya's dharma is not hating the enemy, doing it as duty, not with hate in your heart, not with degradation, looking down at those people. If you're protecting your homeland, you're doing it honorably, without any negative repercussions, without hating and creating a division. This is a very high spiritual ideal also, as high as the non-violent situation. So these are the deeper aspects of what, instead of just saying, wait, we got to be mean, we got to take them out of their homes and split their babies and put them in the prison. No, that's certainly not dharmic in any sense. And what allowed that to happen was to create a division in what is expected of a government and a human being, according to Scripture. And you can dive into Scripture. They justified slavery in Scripture. There's a lot of, if you look back in the old references, it's pretty interesting what they found in justifications for things that were actually done. Look at the Spanish Inquisition, what was done against the Jewish people. and against others that were believing it was horrible, horrible situation that happened. And these, by the same means, going into the same means. So compassion is a very high spiritual ideal, and it is universal. And it can be expressed in many ways. It can be expressed through even military situations, through the Kshatriya ideal of Dharma, non-hating, doing the highest without any attachment to the results of your actions, without any hate or enmity towards any other creation or being or soul, just letting the righteous actions be there. This is the difference, and it makes all the difference. Now, so I don't want to, rag on our friends that are trying to use these things, but I thought it would be interesting that if you look at spiritual principle even deeper, now you've got these two conflicting ideals. You've got this higher spiritual ideal that has really hard to live up to, isn't it? I mean, it's hard not to get mad at people and think of them as lower than you if they do something bad to you. I mean, gosh, if somebody hurts your family, right? I mean, there's some serious things that can happen in this world. Protecting them without hate is obvious. There's a difference between that and going in to try to without justification. So this is karma. Remember, governments have karma and people have karma, collectively and individually. So what is the whole thing behind this? Because this gets to be very beautiful, and it's something, because I was really, frustrated for a long time with all of these horrible things you're seeing, and my heart was hurting and all these things. It still does, obviously. But this is a couple of things that will lead us to the end of what we're going to talk about today, and we'll continue on with this theme in the next session. But this is Swami Sabodhananda. This is from by Swami Chidanandaji, one of his books. Know that behind all sorrow stands God himself. A song I heard some time back goes like this: "O Divine Mother, I have realized that all the sorrows you have given and are giving me now are only signs that you are gracious towards me. Ordinary people can't understand what will finally bring them peace. Each human being is surrounded by happiness as well as sorrow. God makes us do whatever he likes. We don't understand this. That is why only weeping falls to our lot. On the other hand, a true devotee says, O Lord, give me as much pain as you like. Even if I forget you, please don't forget me. Even though I can't see you, please take care of me. You are my all in all, in happiness as well as sorrow. A mixture of good and evil. This is what the world is. If you have to cry, cry for God. Only he will remain in this world and the next. If anything at all is real in this world, it is God's name and nothing else." Now, because when he said something that really hit me, and all of a sudden I made a connection. He said, a mixture of good and evil. A mixture of good and evil is the world. And it's said over and over again, especially in the Eastern philosophies. So, a lot of us are devotees of Kali, aren't we? Especially if we're followers of Sri Ramakrishna. And it really hit me like a brick one day when I looked at Ma, and you have 4 arms, 2 of which are very benign. One is giving blessings, and the other one is holding the trident. And the other 2 have a sword and a severed head. Ma Kali is that expression of all creation. And in her is the essence of all things, darkness and light, the good and the evil. It's kind of interesting. When you look at the scriptures and the Vedas, it talks about 2 currents in creation. There's the outgoing current, which is the one who projects into division, the unification, the pure unity that is Brahman, and it divides it, Kali, Allah, time is the first thing that chops up this infinity. You have to have a now, a future, and a past. And then you have division of this. There is this line from this layer of this consciousness is separate from this consciousness. And that's very, very difficult to do when you have a unified Brahman, infinite wisdom, existence, consciousness, and bliss, right? Satchidananda, the ocean of consciousness, the ocean of bliss. How do you divide that up? It takes tremendous Mahakali. She is the one who has all of those. And so there needs to be a projecting, expelling current to create creation. And so one of the currents is apana, going down out from this pure being into division. And they say there's different levels of creation. And at first they're very faint divisions and faint separations of the energy, and it gets more and more defined and more concrete of separation as you go down into the levels of creation. The causal world, the astral world, the physical world, which is the final one, which is what we think is solid and defined. And I'm different, and you are different, and you are different, and you are different. We are all different people. Our consciousnesses are divided, it seems, ultimately. And then we don't see that unity even in imagination most of the time. We see it as solid separation of a distinct time is very, very real to us. All these divisions are very, very real. And that energy is constantly pushing out, creating this physical world and all the worlds and all the divisions. And it's Mahakali, Ma, the great Ma. That's why they say in order to go back to that, you have to go through Ma. You have to go through that division and lead your way back to that unity. So in Ma is the darkness and the light. That's what they were saying. That Ma, you give, whatever you give, I just surrender to you, I love you. That's one way of looking at this. So Ma, being the darkness and the light, really leads us to what we're going to talk about next week more. And that is, how can you see such horrible things happening as part of this divine plan of, for every joy there is a sorrow, for every agony there is an ecstasy. You know, how can that make any sense to us as a human being, and seeing such horribleness and knowing that the same source is creating all of this. So this is quite interesting. So what you see when you see these folks taking the divisive path, know that they're following the projecting current of creation, so that they're afraid. Think about it. Why would somebody say that empathy is dangerous? Why? Well, quite simply, is that they would have to then, if empathy is okay, you would have to take other people into consideration in your actions. You can't just be and do what you want alone. You have to work in concert with many other things outside of yourself. Your attention is not just on you anymore. Now it's on first perhaps your family, then your relatives and your extended family, then maybe your city, then maybe your nation, and then the world, then the universe. You know, this empathy goes and it splits away all of these divisions that we want and we sometimes hold on to. So this empathy is the door that leads to spirit, that leads to divinity. That the higher and higher form of empathy, as we go into that, it's the end of separation. It's the end of us. And I think they understand that. And so fear leads them to say, okay, this is a bad person. These are not, I don't have to care about these people. I can do anything I want to them. I can be selfish and just do what's good for me. They don't count because they're lower than me. They're not as important. They're not human beings, or they're not Americans, or whatever you want to call it. Before it was the Jewish folks, or black and white, slavery. There was always somebody that you could create that allows you to do anything you want to. As long as you have a villain in your story, then it gives you license to do anything you want to, because they're lower. So you can be as inhuman as you want to be. You can go against all these really beautiful, clear exhortations in religion. It gives you the internal permission to do anything to anybody, in a sense. And, the problem is that once you have one villain, it's easy to create their other villains. So anybody can become a convenient villain. Necessary. This is the way creation is designed. And so instead of seeing these folks with anger and just see them as completely misguided, long history. I mean, this is the same pattern that's gone on for creation. If you see the thing that happens, civilization after civilization, of seeing people as subhuman or other or not as good as us or not part of our little tribe or our part of our little state or our little country or whatever it is, they're not good. We're only us. We only care about us. I don't care that one of these things that I don't hate the people outside of my home. I just love the people inside of my home. Well, my friend, you can't protect the people inside of your home if you just think the rest of the world is just not anything to worry about, because that also has an effect on your little home inside. It always will. Inside of the country, outside of the country, there's a reciprocal situation going on constantly. When there's a world, if you have one part of the world going into a depression or chaos, you think the rest of the world's gonna be fine? No, cannot. So this is, I was gonna read these things too, which kind of leads us a little bit into understanding. Sri Ramana said, "You may experience anything, but you should never rest content with that. Whether you feel pleasure or fear, ask yourself, who feels the pleasure or the fear? And so carry on the sadhana until pleasure and fear are both transcended and all duality ceases and the reality alone remains." So that, we'll just kind of leave it with that. So when Sri Ramakrishna talked to his disciples, he said, take Advaita, tie it, your understanding of Advaita, and tie it in the corner of your cloth, and then do what you please. All suffering ends in this Advaita unity. That's the only place it ends. It doesn't end in higher states of worlds or heavens. It just continues. It's a continuance of misery. It's a continuance of the cycle. Swami Sarvadevanandaji and Sarvapriyanandaji in their recent talks, they were talking about punya. And no matter how great your punya, your great good virtues are, or your good karma is, if you're living in the higher astral worlds and golden palaces and floating around with all your beings around you, the karma is expended, because it isn't a projection. It's not real. It's a part of, you haven't looked where the real true peace is, and that is in the essence of your being, that pure awareness that is without division, without friction, without any possibility of returning of suffering. That's the only liberation and the only true sanctuary. So all other sanctuaries, higher heavens, great good karma, doing virtuous works and all these things are just a perpetuation of a larger cycle. So this is something that Swamiji really, when he came to the West, he basically talked about non-dualism and Advaita. Now, a lot of people aren't going to understand that. So you have to take it down to what can affect them. How can you expand their horizons to where they're able to be? How can you reach out to somebody and just see that, first of all, show them that you're not a threat to them. You're not a foreign body coming into their world. You're part of them. And these are, I think, what the great beings, whenever somebody meets them, they feel at peace because they're not a threat in any way. Their whole existence is a part of all of them, the people that arrived there. The part of their thinking, part of their feelings, they're not foreign to them. They're not in any way threatening. It's all part of their existence and awarenesses, included in every possibility, in every part of this light show and dark show. So this is the Vedanta ideal, which is this beautiful ideal of all things melt into the one, all paths lead to the same goal. But it's a high ideal and it's a very rare one. So in the meantime, how do we make this world better by steps, by degrees, so that we can start to learn to get along better? How can we reach out to people who are so against everybody, or have their own little group of people that agree with them? And how can we just show them that we're not such bad people? You know, we're liberal or we're whatever, we're conservative. We're not bad people. We're not threatening them in any way whatsoever. And we're not looking down at them. Even the person who was saying horrible things and creating horrible things, you can't look down at them. There's still divinity. So if we start looking down at them, it's just another level of this ignorance. We have to see the God in them. Because the core of all of this stuff that each one of us is that divine awareness, that divine, pure, unadulterated, unpolluted, pure essence is in the center. And I think the great ones see that in each one of us. And so we respond to that because they see that in us. They don't see us as some needs help. They see that divine spark. They see through the illusion. And so they see us in ways that we can't see ourselves. And I think that's how we have to try to be, to perpetuate this and make a difference in the world. So no matter what you do and however you do it, even if you don't teach any of this stuff to somebody intellectually, it can make a difference. Even if you are just there, even if your aura, your vibration is just there, it can make a difference. And now, it's wonderful to see how many millions of spiritual seekers are in America and in all around the world, in centers like this and other centers and other denominations. There's Buddhists walking for peace in America. It's beautiful to know how many people are centers of this kind of ideal. And I think that's something that's quite different than past history times when there was such horrible things happening in the world. We didn't have the spiritual seeds planted like we do now that can grow into that point, each point, the center of harmony and an expression of unity. And I think that will affect the world. And that's our prayer. So let us just do a chant with Ramakrishna Sharanam, and then we'll end this. Like I said, it won't be a long session today, and we'll continue the Advaitic ideal of this when we're talking about Kali and the deeper teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda and some of the great ones that we talked about. They have some beautiful teachings on the essence of Kali, and I think it really speaks to this idea of light and dark. So we'll just sing Ramakrishna Sharanam, and then we'll just end, and we wish all of you peace, joy, and love in your neighborhoods and parts of the world. And hopefully you'll see us next week here after the Super Bowl and the Olympics. We'll see you again. And of course, the next big event we have is Swami Abhidhamma on the 4th of March. So we'll do Ramakrishna Sharanam. Ramakrishna Sharanam, Ramakrishna Sharanam, Ramakrishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Ramakrishna Sharanam, Ramakrishna Sharanam, Ramakrishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Kripahi Kevalam, Kripahi Kevalam, Kripahi Kevalam, Sharanye. Kripahi Kevalam, Kripahi Kevalam, Kripahi Kevalam, Sharanye. Jai Jai Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Sharanagaituham, Sharanagaituham, Sharanagaituham Vande. Sharanagaituham, Sharanagaituham, Sharanagaituham Vande. Jai Jai Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Namo. Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Namo. Jai Jai Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Ram Krishna, Jaya Jaya, Ram Krishna, Jaya, Ram Krishna, Jaya Jaya, Ram Krishna, Krishna, Jaya Jaya, Ram 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 Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Mata. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday.